Hey everyone, Leigh Slomp here, General Manager Technical Services at Rio Tinto Lithium and Advisory Committee member for AusIMM's Critical Minerals Conference 2025. A bit about me, I started my career as a geologist here in WA, lived and worked in the Pilbara and the goldfields across iron ore, nickel and base metals, tantalum and lithium, managing all aspects of geology from exploration through resource estimation, right through to mine geology and production. More recently in my career, I've managed technical services more broadly, so including things like hydrogeology, geometallurgy, geotechnical aspects, pretty much everything involved in the resource and reserve world. That included a role where I was in London for a few years, responsible for resource and reserve reporting for a global portfolio of mines. When I returned to Australia, took up the role of Chief Advisor Professional Standards, part of the AusIMM executive team, where I was responsible for the AusIMM's involvement and strategy around JORC and VALMIN, the Chartered Professional Program, as well as policy, advocacy and government relations. And that really gave me an opportunity to see that ecosystem outside of the mines, the production and the mining companies themselves, and more broadly see the influence and impacts on the industry. I currently sit on the VALMIN committee as an AusIMM representative, and I took up my current role about 2 years ago with Allchem at the time, which became Arcadium Lithium and is now Rio Tinto Lithium. And my role here is focused on managing the Rio Tinto Lithium assets in Australia, including looking at strategic options for our Mount Catlin spodumene mine in Ravensthorpe, which we've just recently moved on to care and maintenance. So I cover exploration studies, again, resources and reserves in that space. Also provide a level of sort of technical support and advice to our Canadian spodumene project and also our strategic team based out of the US. What are the biggest issues in the critical minerals space today? I can't go past the increasing geopolitical tensions and global instability. We've seen that ratchet up again in the last week or so. Markets, be it financial or commodity markets, just don't like instability. And what we see is that manifests as a difficulty in getting the investment that we need to get these critical minerals projects up and running. We also see an increased nationalism of natural resources in Africa, but also this nationalism of manufacturing that we're seeing in the USA. Both of these things just add uncertainty and volatility to the markets, amplifying that difficulty in attracting the investment that's required to build these critical minerals projects that we're going to need for the future. Also, despite a really strong focus on ESG, sustainable and ethical supply chains over the last few years, we haven't seen an emergence of any real green premium or ex-China premium, if that's how you want to look at it. And what that's being translated to is, in some spaces, people are interpreting that as, I guess, a green flag to maybe ease off on that ESG focus. That's a real risk for our industry. We've worked really hard to get to where we are. There's a long way to go. And we can't afford to drop the ball on having a safe, sustainable and ethical supply chain for the critical minerals that we're going to need in the future. We really do risk the general public seeing the mining industry and the resources industry more broadly, potentially dropping that focus, which is not going to be good for how we're perceived. And we all know internally how critical the industry will be to the future. Over the coming years, I think we'll definitely see a shift in the critical minerals space towards an increasing dominance by the majors And we've seen that in Rio Tinto's acquisition of Arcadium and taking a very strong, long position on lithium. I think we'll see this more broadly across the critical minerals space. And that's a good thing in that these larger companies, the majors, can take a longer term view on that investment. They can look past the short and medium term volatility, and fundamentally, the demand is actually still growing. Recent years, if we look at the lithium market itself, the price is depressed now because supply caught up pretty quickly with demand, and it's very hard with a market that is dominated to some extent in an opaque way out of China. But the reality is demand continues to grow. It's just that supply caught up very quick in that space. What we expect is in coming years, that demand will continue to grow. And without new supply coming online, we are going to have a demand crunch. That means we need to take these long-term positions. We need to think about longer-term investment so that we don't end up in this, again, volatile pricing environment that we've seen a few years back. I think the other key things that we'll see moving forward is just an increasing understanding and acceptance that China will remain for a long time a really important part of the supply chain. And that's really important for us here in Australia particularly, because they are our biggest customer and they will continue to be our biggest customer for some time to come. So we are going to need to make sure we're right across that relationship, we're maintaining that relationship, else we will risk some, economic difficulties if that deteriorates too much. On the positive side, I really think we're going to see a continued acceleration of technology adoption and use, and just advancing technology, particularly in this critical minerals space. I think with the advancements that we're seeing in AI, and what I'm hearing is a pretty near-term view on having quantum computing a real tool, we're going to see those tools being applied to some of the difficult problems in the critical minerals space around processing, around batteries, around chemistries and technology. And those tools are really going to accelerate the development of new technologies and breaking down some of those issues that we see in the critical minerals space. The conference really will build on that solid technical foundation that the AusIMM is known for. The AusIMM generates these conferences with a really strong technical foundation, and I've seen that in some of the high quality technical abstracts that I've reviewed for the upcoming conference. Building on that technical foundation, we elevate the conversation around critical minerals and all of those influences globally on the markets, on demand, on supply. We elevate that conversation with a lot of insightful keynotes and panel discussions, which are really taking that higher view and trying to address or at least discuss these key issues and ways forward for our industry. If you are anywhere in the critical minerals supply chain, or even touching on global decarbonisation and electrification activities, which, as we know, are really reliant on these critical minerals, then you need to be at Critical Minerals 2025. And it's not just mining and the immediate processing of the ores, but it's all of those downstream activities that we cover at Critical Minerals, because they really are the drivers for the upstream. So if you're involved in any downstream activities anywhere in the critical minerals space, you really need to be at the conference this year. The other part of the spectrum that we really cover off well is the R&D space. So if you're involved in any R&D on batteries, battery technologies, battery chemistries, or any other key transition technologies, then Critical Minerals 2025 will be a place for you to get the current market situation, see what the developments are. And then more broadly, we know how critical minerals have been key drivers in today's global financial and commodity markets. So if you have an interest at any level in global financial or commodity markets, then Critical Minerals 2025 will be for you. As with all AusIMM conferences, Critical Minerals 2025 is put together by industry for industry. My fellow advisory committee members cover all parts of the value chain and include people who are working at the cutting edge of R&D in this space. I've reviewed many great abstracts already. We've received abstracts across all conference themes. So what we can be assured of is a thorough, high-level conference that covers the whole gamut of critical minerals. It's unfortunate we're going to have to whittle those fantastic abstracts down to fit in the schedule, but it does mean that we're going to have a really high-level agenda and discussion at the conference. So in closing, I'd like to invite you to join me at the Critical Minerals Conference 2025 at the Perth Convention and Exhibition Centre from the 2nd to the 4th of September 2025. You can register to attend at ausimm.com. I really look forward to seeing you there.